Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel today. Today our topic is New South Wales Planning Overhaul. Streamlining housing development. Most populated and home to Sydney, New South Wales has been facing housing challenges concerning population growth, urbanisation, and economic migration. Problems such as lengthy waiting lists and lack of affordable housing, along with excessive demand, portray the struggles of the housing market in NSW. Supply and demand economic theory suggests that the market works in such a way that demand drives the market. The historical context of housing development and planning in New South Wales. The housing development problems in New South Wales can only be understood in the context of the historical evolution of the planning systems it has gone through. Over the past several decades, the planning of New South Wales has increasingly become a web of complexities. The local councils, the state planning authorities, and the regulations set at the level of the Commonwealth have performed overlapping functions in the authorization of housing. The frameworks constructed were aimed at the protection of communities, the preservation of heritage, and the safeguarding of the environment. In practice, however, these frameworks have bred duplication, inconsistency, and inefficiency. Policy imperatives and aims of the overhaul driven by a multiplicity of policy realities. The planning overhaul seeks to construct both local and international trends. The housing affordability crisis is the primary driver. Sydney and other metropolitan coping centres had their midpoint home costs balloon beyond the means of average families. The lack of action could mean that the concept of owning a home in the future could remain only a dream for the rest. Focusing on economic productivity is equally important. Housing development is primarily a social concern along with being an economic pillar. Economic productivity is facilitated by construction and housing development, which in turn creates employment opportunities, boosts the investment economy, and aids in local investment establishment. These objectives, however, may be stunted by planning approval delays, which hinders economic growth. The goal of the overhaul is to enable faster housing development and construction to increase economic opportunities. Measures of reforms and strategies. The planning reform for NSW has a variety of different instruments aimed to simplify and speed up the pace of housing development. Streamlining the approval processes is one of the most important of these reforms. The approval of procedures, along with the guidelines, and the duplication of processes aims to eliminate redundant procedures and give certainty to the developers. Also, as part of the reform, certain categories of housing development, including social and affordable housing development, will have fast-tracked approval. Effects on the housing development and its affordability. The outcomes from the planning are already showing and are one of the most visible in regard to housing development and affordability. Projects can be approved and construction can begin sooner to completion, which is why timeframes for each step are important, and completion targets are not possible if the planning is not adhered to. This increases the supply of housing, which is important in a market where there is a shortage of housing development and supply, and the opposing side, the demand, always exceeds the availability in the market. Difficulties and the backlash. As enthusiastic as most people may be about the changes to planning in New South Wales, there are bound to parameters which may trigger anxiety and outrage within some groups. A speed and quality divide remains a primary area of contention. There are arguments which support the notion that the environment, society, and culture suffer to a large extent as a result of the lack of comprehensive assessments which are made on fast-tracked approvals. With fast and careful planning, there seems to be a need to come up with the no-harm approach. The planning overhaul for NSW. Though challenges exist, planning overhauls in NSW offer much for fostering and sustaining prosperity in the region. The reforms, by increasing the supply of housing, can narrow the ever-widening affordability gap and bolster stagnating confidence in the housing market. Sustainability remains the most important and most significant opportunity. Through the strategic spatial integration of housing growth, transport, renewable energy, and green design, NSW can develop more affordable and environmentally sustainable communities, positioning the state as a torchbearer in sustainable urbanism. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.